My book, The Greenway Imperative, the reason that I wanted to write this was to tell the story or stories of these fantastic communities that I had a chance to work with over the past 35 years. What were some of the obstacles that they overcame in terms of building their greenway systems or conserving a valuable open space? Um, and also, I think this is like the first book, in my opinion, in the last 30 years that's really talked about the people behind the movement and how they came together to overcome those challenges. I'm trying to address the urgent need that we have in America and really around the world to save the remaining wildlands and waters uh, in terms of conservation, and also responding to the fact that the human impact on the planet, there's a need to restore these lands and waters that have been impacted by development. I also feel like greenways are basically about connections, connecting us to the nature, connecting us to each other, connecting us to our communities. And I feel like over time, as populations have grown and our communities have grown, that we've sort of lost those connections. And I wrote about this sort of urgent sense of urgency before the COVID-19 pandemic. So these were issues that I was contemplating, for the past few years. And this book really contains a series of stories that talk about how people overcame challenges and made these connections in their communities. Also, I think as we look ahead to the society as it's evolving and the benefits that greenways bestow, certainly the pandemic is pointing out the need to focus on health and wellness, but greenways offer so many benefits: transportation, conservation, connections to our communities, the preservation of cultural and natural resources. So I do feel like greenways are an imperative, that they're responding to urgent needs that we have in our society today, and that the book really highlights how people have gone on to tackle these challenges and resolve those. Well, first of all, I love this collection of the projects. There are 10, and the range of projects is pretty fascinating in terms of the themes, what the topics that they address, from conservation to transportation, health and wellness aspects, economic development. So I really wanted to select a range that showed you how greenways respond to all different kinds of challenges and opportunities. The second was the geographic range of the projects themselves. And the fact that these projects take place in communities that people are very familiar with: Charleston, South Carolina, Miami, Florida, Las Vegas, Nevada, the Grand Canyon. As one book reviewer has already pointed out, these are projects that everyone's going to be familiar with. These are landscapes and communities that you've been in. And now you get to see those communities from the perspective of greenway development. And then I felt like as the book proceeds, it gives you lessons learned, things that you can take away and use in your community. So I wanted to have that full range of possibilities. As you read through each story, you get a sense of the breadth of greenways, the depth of greenways, and what you might take away and use in your community. Well, who doesn't love a story? We've been telling stories for all the time that we've been around as human beings. We've been passing stories on one to the other. The other thing was I felt like there were so many technical books already in the marketplace. This is the first book in more than 30 years that focuses on the human side of building greenways and takes people through the challenges of problem solving. So problems are identified at the very beginning of every chapter, and then you get the process, you get the story of how people took on those challenges and resolved them. So hopefully, using this writing style, it's a way of holding the interest of the reader a little bit longer, delivering some technical information, but doing it in a fun, whimsical way at times, in a way in which I'm able to hold the reader's attention as they work through the different kinds of problems that were taken on and resolved. Well, I feel like it's really put a laser-like focus on the impact that 8 billion people are having on the planet's ecological systems. Granted, I think a lot of people have been talking about this, but maybe people haven't really appreciated how interconnected everything is on this planet and how vulnerable we are as a species. There is this concept of One Health in which we recognize that we are integral to nature, that we're connected to the plants and animals and the ecosystems of the planet. And critically, when one element gets sick, the rest of it gets sick. We have to do a better job, I think, of being better stewards of these resources, being better managers of the ecosystems and the microclimates that we live in. Now, in my opinion, greenways are a really good outlet for doing that because greenways are all about balancing the needs of man and the needs of nature. I think it's a great intersection where these two are done well. I think historically, though, greenway advocates have focused too much on trail tread, and not enough on corridor. And so I'm hoping that coming out of the pandemic, there's a sense or a chance for all of us to focus more on the corridors of land and water that we're putting together to host people in the landscape. And I think finally, just as greenway systems have evolved, they've really grown. They're getting bigger and bigger. We're at a tipping point, in my opinion, where we can really connect the North American continent certainly across the United States together with an interconnected system of greenways, as was envisioned by landscape architect Warren Manning more than 100 years ago. So I think that's one of the future visions that's really talked about in the book in chapter 11, and one of the things I really hope will happen long term.